So hi everybody, it's Matt here, your local friendly neighbourhood vestibular migraine sufferer. So firstly, before I kick off, I just want to apologise for not doing any videos of late. Unfortunately, my mum's been really quite seriously ill in hospital. She's in hospital for the third time at the moment within the last 2 months. And it's been a very stressful time, as you can imagine. So I've been spending a lot of time at hospital and then trying to fit work and, just staying alive, feeding myself, doing some exercise in between all that. So it's just meant I've not had time to do any videos at all. I have tried to reply to any comments that have been left on my videos, but I did have quite a big spell where I just wasn't going near YouTube at all. I just didn't have the capacity to do that. So I do apologise, one, for the lack of videos, and two, if it's taken me a while to reply to your comments. But do keep them coming. As I said, I'm trying to reply in batches. So I usually try and do it on a weekend when I don't have to balance the hospital with working, because fortunately I don't work weekends. So I have just worked a little bit today, but that's another story. So what's been going on with me is kind of reminding me of a topic that I have kind of touched on before, but I wanted to just kind of address it head on really, and that's the kind of role of stress in vestibular migraine or vestibular disorder. So the reason why this came into my mind is because when I was in hospital the other week, I was talking to my mum about some of the symptoms she experienced, and she sort of was describing something similar to what we know as derealization or depersonalization, that everyone's favorite vestibular symptom. So that's the feeling that I describe as being a little bit drunk without actually having any drink, where you feel slightly detached from the world, movement around you is not quite right, that kind of thing. And as I've said in another video, my theory as to what that is because when you're suffering from vestibular disorder or vestibular migraine, you get sensory overload from the light, so photophobia, and you also, a number of sufferers, get sensitivity from motion around them, so motions feels funny. So that's why you get problems, particularly in places like supermarkets or shopping malls, where you've got light, but then you've also got motion. And what derealization, depersonalization is, in my opinion, is the brain getting just too much from the overload of light and the overload of movement, and it tries to disconnect itself, or it tries to give your body a break, really. So that's why you get this weird depersonalization. If you think about it as well, and I said it's a bit like being drunk. When you're drunk, that is an effect on the brain, isn't it? That's intoxication of the brain. So it's, in my opinion, something a little bit similar to that. Anyway, so my mum mentioned a symptom that was a bit like that, and then my dad looked at me and said, "Oh, yes, you had that, didn't you?" And said, "Oh, it'll be stress, won't it? Stress." And that reminded me of one of my all-time bugbears, which is when people just summarise your symptoms or the vestibular condition, vestibular disorders, as just stress, which in my opinion is infuriating, because we know it is not stress. It is a physical illness and you've got symptoms that are being caused by a physical illness. So I kind of did correct my dad a little bit, but I didn't go mental, because we were obviously by my mum's hospital bedside. So that misconception is one that really frustrates me. But anyway, so what I want to just do is just cover, in my opinion, in this video, 2 ways in which stress does kind of link into vestibular migraine. So firstly, as I've said, stress is not what's causing your symptoms of vestibular migraine or disorder, in my opinion. That's the physical issue you're experiencing, and that's a whole different video as to what the physical issue is. But what stress can do is it can be that kind of final straw that pushes you into a vestibular phase, or a vestibular attack, or a chronic phase, in my opinion. So it can do that, but in my opinion, it will only do that to people who are already susceptible to vestibular migraine. So if stress triggered vestibular migraine on its own, then every single person in the world who has some stress would get vestibular disorder, wouldn't they? Think about it. So that, in a way, might be even a good thing, because it might mean we have a cure for it by now. But anyway, so for me, there has to be something else at play. So I think if you think about it, if you've got something that means you're susceptible to vestibular disorder, so that might be your hormones, particularly in women. That might be if you've had a virus, like what happened to me, that kind of affected your vestibular system. It could be genetics. So if you've got a history of migraines in your family, then you've got that weakness there. stress on top of that can be that trigger that pushes you over that threshold into a vestibular disorder. Just move my chair towards the camera a bit there. So that's one way in which stress does play a role, but as I've said in the video earlier, stress is not causing the symptoms are physical. But that links us nicely on to point 2 in how stress can be an influencer. So stress certainly can make the symptoms worse. So as I said, stress is not causing your symptoms, it's the physical condition, but stress can be like petrol, which is thrown onto a fire. So the fire is the physical symptoms, and then here comes the petrol, which is stress, and you get stressed, and then throw that on and poof, they ignite and make the physical symptoms worse. So, and also, as I've said in other videos, that tends to happen with vestibular disorders because the vestibular system is so interlinked with the mood system in the human body. If you get a vestibular disturbance, then you automatically get a mood issue, so anxiety, depression, whatever it may be. So stress, of course, is that kind of thing. So as soon as you get that stress element, the kind of flip effect, the butterfly effect, is then those physical symptoms you're already experiencing just explode and get way, way worse. So that's how stress, I think, plays a part in vestibular migraine. So to summarize, stress is not causing your symptoms. That's physical, that's coming from the vestibular disorder, but stress can be the thing that pushes somebody into a chronic vestibular phase or a vestibular episode if they're already susceptible to vestibular issues. And then secondly, stress can be that exacerbator of symptoms, not the cause, but it can certainly exacerbate the symptoms and make them a lot worse. And I did notice in my case that once I treated the sort of anxiety and stress side of the illness, settled that down, then it did mean that the symptoms did subside quite a bit. So obviously I'm living proof of that. So that's just really what I wanted to cover, really. And again, this is just my opinion. It might be that you think differently. You might think that stress in itself can be a cause of vestibular issues. It might be that you think some of the symptoms are actually stress. Personally, I don't think that, but lots of people do, unfortunately, and also lots of GPs do, which can be incredibly frustrating for vestibular sufferers. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. It was kind of quite timely for me, given I've been under quite a lot of stress lately. Fortunately, I haven't fallen into another chronic vestibular phase, which is great news. So that shows that when you find that right medication, that right sort of tinkering to your diet, or the right vitamins, or all those things together, you are armed and ready for any future sort of periods where you could get a vestibular phase. So I've described it before as I've got the right surfboard now, so now when the waves come, I can ride the waves, rather than in the past I didn't have the surfboard, so I just got knocked over by the waves. So again, bit of living proof for you there. So I hope that was useful. I've got a couple of videos that I still want to do. I still want to do the one about getting back to the pub. I know one of my subscribers, Ricardo, wants me to do one about the gym, and I will do when I get time. I also want to do one as well about some of the visual vestibular physiotherapy that you can do using videos on YouTube, and I want to just cover that off, but I want to take my time with that because it's a bit more in depth. So hope that's useful, and remember, as you were, you'll be again. Take care, everybody. See you soon.